Welcome back, everybody, to the Sexy Business Podcast. This is one of the special episodes of the year. We are recording it in December, but this will come out in January because we are looking back at the 2025 year of the sexy business, and we'll be delivering some awards specifically only including anything that showed up on the podcast. So if we didn't talk about it already on the show, then it won't be mentioned. But if it is mentioned on the show, you should go back and watch that episode to learn more about it. We are your lovely hosts. I'm Spooky Dangerous. This is Lewd Neko. As always, we've never missed an episode together, and we are going to be presenting some awards to the fantastic people and fantastic games that we have encountered this year. Neko, what is our first award title?
All right, starting us off is Best Gameplay. We've played a lot of different games this year, from traditional visual novels to more experimental ones. We've played some RPGs, we played some genre-defying ones, and we have chosen our winner. And the winner of Best Gameplay is Flipwitch. This was one we talked about pretty early on into the year. For those of you unfamiliar with it, it's a little Metroidvania type game, and I was really impressed with its gameplay as someone who normally actually doesn't like Metroidvanias. I thought it was a really nice difficulty where it's not too hard, but it does still have enough of a challenge. It had some nice exploration, some really good boss fights, and altogether it is something that I would really recommend if you are looking for a lewd game that has more of an emphasis on the gameplay elements.
All right, and then our next category is Best Visuals. This is always a tough one to kind of pick because there are a lot of incredibly talented artists out there putting quality content into a lot of different games in a lot of different styles. We both agreed on what we thought our favorite one was for this category, and that is Love Sucks. Not only does it have very high quality artwork just for the characters and the sexy scenes, but it has a lot of high quality work put into stuff like the backgrounds, stuff like the scenes where sexy stuff isn't happening and people are just goofing around and being silly, and there's a lot of unique character design and stuff in this one. So I felt like it was worth, kind of signaling out here that it was best visuals for us, and we came back and played it twice on the show, which kind of does tell that it was worthy of praise.
All right, next up we have, I believe, Most Unique. Yes, so this category is, we wanted to highlight adult games that are trying to do things that are different, because let's be honest, there are a lot of games that are kind of similar, partially just because a lot of them are going to be things like visual novels or RPGs, since those are really easy to make into lewd games. And so in this category, we're going to be highlighting a game and dev who are doing something different, and this is going to Adi Mas. We talked about this during the interview with Mel Rui, who has made a lot of adult games that are really doing some unique things. So Adi Mas is basically a co-op style puzzle game that's also lewd, and it also has a pretty interesting storyline. So it had a lot of things that made it really unique. I would say if you are interested at all in furry based stuff, or even if the idea of sort of a sexy puzzle game is exciting for you, you should check this one out. It's great.
Absolutely. All right, coming up next, we've got Neko's Kink Same, which means that you're going to have to introduce this one.
Yeah, so for this one, we both get our own category. And so this one just goes to basically the game where we're like, this game was made for me. And the game that was made for me was You Kill Me Every Time Strayed. We talked about this one a couple months ago. This is a game I've been looking forward to for years. I've been supporting it on Patreon. For anyone who watches my stuff, you know how much I love Murderous Men, and I love this game so much. It's basically like my game of the year.
Hell yeah. And then that means we get to come on and do Spooky's Kink Same. This was a bit of a harder choice for me, but I ended up settling on Book of Korvold. There's a few different bits and pieces in here that I really liked. Like, I really do like the big lady, but I also like how the character is interacting with a lot of the other characters, and it's kind of like a trade between I have this quest for power and between things that benefit each other and stuff like that. Like, it has plot relevance. It's not just here because you need to show the player boobs or they'll get bored. It kind of all really ties together really nicely, and that was kind of why I ended up having to pick it over some of the other hot games we had on this list.
All right, and next up, I believe we have our waifu slash husbando category. So this is another one where we both get one. And so we looked at the list of games we played and we got to choose our favorite waifu and or husbando. And my pick was Hazel from Hazelnut Latte, who I feel like counts as both a waifu and a husbando. I love femboys. I love seeing them in games. And Hazel was a real highlight in particular because they are such a well-written character where they aren't just sort of a sex object or they aren't like a stereotype. You get to know them in a lot of really interesting ways, like when they talk about like their favorite horror movie franchise or something like that. Plus, they are extremely cute, really great art. So I think if you're looking for a very well-written femboy style romance, Hazel has definitely got that for you.
Absolutely. I would let hazelnut in my latte, but for Spooky's waifu or husbando pick, I wanted to pick someone else because we can't share a waifu husbando. That's unfair.
Yeah, we have to be monogamous.
And this was a funny one because we spent a little bit of time going, hey, what would this actually be? And then when I went back and had a look at the list of games, it was very clear that Cool Meter is my waifu of all time. She's so cute. And so, unfortunately, that was the pick. There's like a lot of other good choices from some of the more indie games and stuff that we had played, but I feel like this one was the one that I yeehawed the most about when we had the episode come up, and she's just so cute. All right, next up is best protagonist. Neko, take it away.
All right, yeah, I wanted to highlight protagonists in these kinds of games in particular because, man, I've played so many adult games that have terrible protagonists where it's usually just the fact that the protagonist sometimes doesn't have any form of personality or anything that makes them unique so they can be a self-insert, which don't get me wrong, that works. But isn't it fun to have a protagonist that actually does things or has something that makes them unique? And so my choice for the best protagonist is Lord Goblin. So this was another game we talked about during an interview, and as you can tell from the title of the game, the protagonist is basically this beaten down goblin who one day gets, put up into a lordship position, which is a really unique sort of archetype for like a goblin type character. That's usually not the role they really occupy in these kinds of games. But also he was kind of unique as a character. He has some interesting personality, even from the short bit that we played. So I really enjoyed getting to see that POV.
Absolutely. Lord Goblin was one of the ones that I was clamoring about a lot before we even got it onto the show. I had it as my most anticipated for 2025 when we looked at our end of year 2024, and I'm happy with how it's coming together. But that means we need to talk about our next category, which is most improved. So this is another interesting one where some games, especially ones that we've had, come on the show, have started out as something and then have just undergone a radical change over time based on either, fan feedback or criticism, or they've just wanted to change the entire engine to something else. Something that I think is very difficult because fans always clamoring for new content. It's really hard to sell something that is not going to be something new. It's changing something that they had already and trying to make it better. And so that is going to be kind of a complicated sell from my perspective, but I think that this game in particular has made it work. And this game in particular is Academy 34. So they went through like an entire art overhaul. They did like lots of new routing and different stuff like that to put it all together. And part of this, I assume, was because they wanted the characters to be slightly more distinct and different from the actual inspired Overwatch characters. And when they've come and done the rework, they've made them, take on a little bit more of their personality, but they're still very clearly inspired from the original characters. And then as they've gone and added more content, they're doing stuff where it's like, okay, this is a big section we're going to be coming and spending time with this character in particular. And it's worked out really well for them. So I think they're definitely very deserving of this award, but that's not to say that there's not lots of other devs out there that have done some radical big improvements to their games that worth showcasing as well, but this is the one that we picked.
All right. Next up is, I believe this is kind of the opposite of that. So this is the toppiest, sloppiest award, which to clarify does not mean we think this game is good. We think it's the worst of the slop. We had to look at a couple of slop games this year, as well as I think last year, because of the whole surge of AI stuff. And so this is a game that we hate the most. And the game that we chose for that is Fuda and Femboy House. We talked about this one a couple of months ago. I almost chose a Femboy Roommate because we did also really hate that one, but we chose this one. We hate it more because it has been on the top 10 on Steam for such a freaking long time because, it got put up there and now pretty much anyone who like really isn't familiar with the scene sees this, doesn't realize that it's just a bunch of slop and garbage, but they see titties, they see the keywords Femboy, Fuda, and they click buy instantly, which is very sad for all of the other devs who are working really hard to actually make games that are not slop. So don't buy this game. If you see your friends joking about buying it, tell them to, quote unquote, buy it as a joke if it's any other game. you know, wink, wink. It doesn't have to be this one. Don't waste your money on this. Please don't. It's so bad.
Instead of buying this game, buy the farm. We, like you said, we have had a couple of slop games on the show. We had Femtasia, we had My Femboy Roommate. And it's painful to see how much success they had. This one in particular, I fought to have as the toppiest, sloppiest because everything's delisted. Every game on Steam and itch.io is delisted, except this one, because this one is, as I'm scrolling through my Discover page and my carousels and stuff like that, this shows up every fourth game. So I don't know if Gaben is fucking confirmed to be into dick girls and femboys or something, but for some reason this game is being so heavily pushed in the algorithm. It's got so many bought reviews. It's got so many people posting meme reviews on it, which is giving it so much spotlight. It must be making absolute bank. And then the people that actually posted a real review talking about the gameplay of it is like, this is dog shit. It barely functions. It's got DLC for extra outfits to try and crank more money out of you. It's really upsetting as just a product, as just a concept in general, and I feel like it was worth doing a Razzie type award for just the shittest thing, while we're here, because unfortunately the podcast is heading in a direction where we are showcasing bad things as well as good things, and we are doing our best to showcase more of the good things, and sometimes bad things like this have to get through because they're worth talking about, because they're hot and happening. And what are we if not a podcast that is trying to get people to click on our goddamn videos?
It's like a PSA, because I've seen lots of people who have seen these kinds of titles and they're like, oh, this looks funny, haha, femboy. And I'm like, that's AI slob. And they're like, wait, what?
Yeah, you might as well just go onto eHentai and just look at the image album for free, and you will have enjoyed all of the possible enjoyable content for the game. All right, let's move on to our next category. Our next category is Two Hot Milfs' fan favorite. So one of the reasons why we've done this, every other category in this awards show is stuff that Neko and I talked about, and we picked something out. And I specifically did not include any THM content except for this one category. This is the only time that we will show up. And we had the Adult Game Awards, which I use in quotes because I think it's bullshit, where Horny Capybara, the publisher for Fuda Femboy House, created this awards show and then basically only invited AI slop games and then delivered it to all of their fans and got them to vote on their own games so that they could award themselves a bunch of awards to get a bunch of accolades on Steam. And we intentionally didn't want this show to be something where we're patting ourselves on the back. So what we did was we had a Twitter poll of the 4 major games that we've been working on and releasing this year, and we got people to vote. And the winner was Shackles of Elswyn. And it wasn't close. Shackles of Elswyn got like 60% of the votes, which I think is really interesting. I think Shackles of Elswyn really does show that it was our first game. It does a lot of things different to our other games because we've tried different styles or we've tried to add more different things to them. Shackles doesn't have character sprites for when characters are talking. They have some sprites of characters just standing in a scene, but they don't emote. And so, and that's intentional, and it's to create this art density of there's just only action happening. There's just art happening of when something is happening, there's action happening, and it's trying to make it as art dense as possible in that way, which is very different to like a lot of other different visual novels. For example, Prince of Suburbia, which is like 600 words per art piece or something. And so we really wanted it to be like constantly happening, constantly, excitement and new art and stuff like that. Compared to our other games where Sleep Shock has a lot of talking and discussing about what's going on, and also now has a lot of mini games. We have the fish mini game, which was removed, but we now have our safe cracking mini game, which now has fish in it, and we have a new mini game which is coming out in January. I think we'll see the first version of it, which I'm really excited about. It's 6,000 lines of code. It was a fucking nightmare, and we've got some other new cool stuff, like Creature of Casterfield, which is a completely non-linear style visual novel where you're going and exploring and reading documents and finding people and talking to them. And because that doesn't have gameplay yet, I think that's hurt it a little bit. And that's why I think people voted for Shackles of Elswyn, because it is relatively large compared to the other games. It has the most pieces of art in it, and it's been running the longest. It's had the most opportunity for people to encounter it and to pick it out as their favorite. So I'm curious to see if this is going to change in the years to come, but I understand why Shackles of Elswyn has been picked to be the queen of the category.
All right, and I think next up we have our most anticipated. So this will be another one where we both get to talk about it.
All right. So here's my most anticipated game. This is an interesting one because Neko was like, we should do a most anticipated category. And I'm like, but I don't have anything that I'm anticipating right now. And then I went and checked on my Steam wish list, and most of the games on there are board games. Then as I scrolled down to the adult section, which is just everything that's recent, I actually found something that I am heavily anticipating. It doesn't... I think it has a playable demo, but it's only on Patreon. But it doesn't have any gameplay on itch.io or Steam yet. And it's just collecting wish lists, but on Twitter they're posting animations from the game pretty regularly, and they are very, very high quality. We haven't really had a chance to talk about it on the show properly yet, but that game is Soulgasm. It's kind of difficult to reveal too much details about the plot, as like I said, the game's not playable right now, but it's got kind of like a pirates and fantasy towns kind of vibe. There's lots of great waifus in this game, including a tiny goblin girl, which is my favorite one. No surprise. And the art quality is incredibly high, but the animation quality is best in show. Like when this game releases, I think it will sink many, many other boats, because it is just going to set such a high standard. And it's been in development hell for, I think, a long time now. And I don't know that they have a release date or any penned release date, because I think that they're trying to milk Patreon money for as long as possible. But when it does finally come out, I will be very excited to come and play it and definitely get it onto the podcast. Because I think this is definitely going to be one worth looking at and talking about. And hopefully we can get a developer interview for this one.
All right. And then for my most anticipated, I wanted to make it something based on like a demo I played this year, because I did play quite a lot of demos when we did a little episode for that. And then I've also just been playing some demos in like my spare time. And there's probably other games on my wish list I might be anticipating more. But out of the demos that I played, the one that stuck out to me was Sloppy Fields. This is one we actually talked about during our demo roundup from like the summer. This is a little sort of clicker game where, you get to work on a farm. There are, various monster girls who do all sorts of things. You gotta pay your rent, things like that. And it was only in demo form when I played it. It is currently in early access. I think it's about halfway done. So I'm looking forward to playing this one when I think it's fully done. I think this is the kind of game where I'm gonna kind of wait for it to be completed and then really sink my teeth into it.
Hell yeah. I actually really did like having a look at it when we did cover it on the demo roundup. It looks very cute. I really do like the pixel art style, and I think it's interesting with how you are interacting with the other characters and the girls in the game. So I agree. I think when this one does have maybe a full release, we'll be doing the same to try and get this one on the show and talk about it, because I would love to get a chance to play through it, and especially because it seems a little bit more gameplay heavy than sort of the visual novel stuff that we normally are talking about. I think it will be exciting to have a look at it from that perspective as well. All right, up next, we've got Neko's favorite episode. Tell us about it.
So we wanted to both kind of choose like our favorite episode that we recorded this year. And first things first, I'll just say we did a lot of interviews this year. I think we did a lot more than we did our first year of the show.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think we've just both gotten really bold about just like cold DMing these random people and being like, "Hey, want to come on my podcast?" And we got really successful with it in a lot of ways. And so both, I'll spoil it a little bit. Both me and Spooky ended up choosing an interview, which I think makes sense. Interviews are always really exciting, and I really enjoyed like all of the interviews we did this year. But the one I think I enjoyed the most was with the dev of Hazelnut Latte. So this was Radlord's interview. Now, I had already glazed Hazelnut Latte as a game even before we got in contact with him. It had been something that like immediately jumped out to me as, oh my gosh, this game is really awesome. It's doing so many cool things. I was really interested in the sort of queer characters and how well represented they were. And so it was really fun to get to talk to Radlord, like even before the show had started when we were just like warming up. He was very approachable, very fun to talk to, and we got to learn a lot about the game and its development. So I really enjoyed this. Hopefully, maybe we'll have him on the show again at some point once Hazelnut Latte has gone further into development.
When it's gone platinum and it's the top 10 on Steam.
When it dethrones Fuda and Femboy House or whatever, and it becomes #1 on Steam.
This is the real #1 Femboy game. And yeah, honestly. I think you're right. Radlord was great. And not only just when we were doing the episode and talking about a whole bunch of stuff, because we kind of ended with him hating my femboy roommate, which is like a moment of unison for all of us. But then also after the episode, we kind of went on a big anti-AI rant and stuff like that as well, which is, it's always nice to know that devs are kind of in the same place and we're all kind of experiencing the same troubles with like the delisting and the current MasterCard climate and stuff like that. And so it's really kind of wholesome to see other people fighting the same good fight and kind of understanding what's going on, but then just doing their best to make cool art and have stuff that explores gender issues and how different genders and stuff should be depicted in these kind of games to be actually more like real people and less like sex objects, which I think Radlord did a great job for. So I think this is a spectacular pick for favorite episode. But that means that next up is my favorite episode. And what was really funny about this one is that we both kind of mentioned it when we were talking about what we think our best episodes were. And I also, whenever we have a new guest, very often we will reach out to a guest and I'll be like, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? Because we've worked with something or we've talked about something, and I'll be like, it would be really cool to showcase your game on the show. And they go, oh, my English is not very good. And like this happened with Combos and Doodles, for example, where Combos was like, my English is not very good. I'm like, my brother in Christ, you fucking stream on Twitch regularly. I think it's going to be fine. If there's like any really awkward moments, I'll edit it out and it won't be a big deal. And so then they came on the show. And this episode is the one that I always send them to be like, look, it's actually really not that big a deal because Malroe is easily my favorite interview episode. I do actually think about it a lot since we've done it. And beforehand, Malroe was like, my English is not very good. I have a really, really heavy French accent. How is the podcast going to go? And what I thought was really interesting was that he spoke very slow and deliberately, and it meant that you're listening very closely to what he's saying, and a lot of the topics and stuff that we covered were like pretty deep and pretty heavy, and talking about how stuff like violent video games are really, really popular and is absolutely not censored at all. You can rip out somebody's innards and swing them around, but you can't show a boob. And that seems really weird and strange, and, you know, talking about all this kind of stuff. And it just felt really impactful with how it was delivered and stuff like that. And so I really appreciate that kind of interesting perspective and a lot of the creativity that Malroe brings to a lot of different games that they're working on. Not just with Audimas, but we had a look at some of the other stuff they're making as well, which is always kind of using sort of fairy characters or like cutesy femboy stuff or like a really wide range of interesting different things and concepts. And I think it was really interesting to see, that excitement and interesting creativity that they bring to this scene. I think it's definitely one worth going back and watching if you haven't seen it, and getting a vibe and checking out some of those games too.
Yeah. Even if you don't like furry stuff, again, it was just like we talked about such interesting things, and I think he did have like such a way with words that if this was one you skipped because you're like, oh, I don't like these kinds of games, even if you don't care about the game, you never play it, it's really worth the listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to our final category while we're talking about interviews.
Most important one.
This is the thank you for responding to our DMs award. It's actually really hard to organize a podcast, and I'm a person that's in the space. I always feel really awkward going and interacting with people and being like, hey, check out my podcast, because that's like a really fucking cringe thing to say. My lord, another white guy with a fucking podcast. That's like, you could throw a dart and find 10 of them. Whereas like when I'm working with other artists and stuff, I'll see people like Pit Slip and stuff that I've just been glazing, and Snom Doodles that I've just been glazing, where it's like I see this stuff, like, this is amazing, I want to retweet it, and I want to hang out, and I want to chat to you because I think you're cool. It's really easy. But then when it's like, hey, come on my podcast, all of a sudden it's really difficult. And some people don't have DMs open and stuff like that, and it is hard to get in touch with people. And so we wanted to say, look, hey, thanks to everyone that did come on the show. We really do appreciate having really cool guests, being able to come on and talk to stuff, because those episodes perform way better than a lot of the other episodes that we do, because people are excited to see their favorite guy come on and talk about dicks and boobs and butts or whatever. So here's our thank you for responding to our DMs award winners. There's a long list of them. I believe these are in chronological order. Is that right, Neko?
I think approximately.
All right. Did you want to go through and read them out?
Yeah, so first off, we had Lewd Kitsu, who is a voice actor and VTuber. Same thing with Nightmare Izumi. These are both VTubers who do various kinds of voice work. They were both really great to talk to, and it was nice to get some other VTubers on the show. Definitely something I think we're going to try to get more VTubers maybe involved in the coming year. And then we had RFH Games. So this was Benefit Ship. This was a really great one to talk about since there is so much overlap in our audiences. Next up, we had Zarny Whoop, who was another voice actor, though he's coming more from the background of like Gone Wild audios, which was a really interesting perspective. That's something that, we don't get to talk about as much. We love including people who are doing things that aren't necessarily just involved with adult gaming, but various parts of the adult business. And then we had Bubba Ben, who was really fun to talk to. This is when we get into like a lot of, I think, our gaming based interviews. So remind me, which game was that?
Big Ben Ben is Lord Goblin.
Yeah, so that was Lord Goblin. So yeah, he was really fun to talk to because that was such like a unique game, and he was really funny, telling us some of the inspiration for the characters. Then we had Punching Donut, which was the Corvold
Book of
series.
Corvold,
So we
yep.
got to hear about the development of that game and how it's going to be sort of part of a longer, like overarching series. It had some really interesting lore and art in it. Then we had Cursed Atelier. So this was for Voidbound, and this was also a duo. So it was both the developer of the game as well as one of the marketing leads. This is also our first, I would say, woman in adult gaming in particular, I think, that we've had on the show. So it was kind of cool to get to hear it from that perspective, and just get to hear about how they've worked together on this game. Then we had Marui, which we just talked about. Really wonderful guest, super fun. And then after that, we got to talk about Critical Bliss, which is a publisher. So we got to hear a really interesting perspective of someone who, is managing a lot of things and is kind of looking at the business in a very unique way. After that, we had Radlord, which we just talked about. They were so much fun to have on the show, and it was really nice to get to highlight Hazelnut Latte as a game a little bit more. We also have Marcy Mallard, who has done some writing for THM as well as caption writing. So it was really awesome to hear their perspective on, the writing side of things, since we haven't talked as much about actually like writing erotica. And, it was really fun to talk to them about their interest in writing horror as well as erotica, since that was something that we connected with. And then after that, we had Combos and Doodles, who was really awesome to have. They're a really great artist. I think both me and Spooky have been following them for years. And so it was really awesome to have an artist come onto the show since we haven't has had as many artists quite yet. And then most recently, we had Lime Juice, who is the developer of Suckum Brewery. This was one that I also really enjoyed as someone who's been following Suckum Brewery for a couple of years now. I've glazed this game to Spooky half a dozen times. And so it was really awesome that we finally got to talk about it on the show and that we got to talk about it in the context of an interview. And then last up for the year, we had Jong Games from Harem in Another World. This was someone who reached out to me initially, just kind of saying, hey, do you want to play this game or talk about it? And then we were able to get them into an interview, which was really awesome. I think it was altogether a really great year of interviews. And, hopefully we'll get at least this many, if not more, for next year. And I feel like I'm going to have to make it like my personal goal to maybe start reaching out some more to people who are outside of just game developers, because they're great to talk to. But we want to include all of the people who are making things, whether it's sexy cosplay or erotic audios or doing various forms of lewd tubing, making art, erotica, any of the things that exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some people that are definitely dream guests for me, and I think we really can't undersell how big some of these gets are. I know Bishojo Mum's not on this list, but Bishojo Mum is like one
She
of
would have
the
won.
biggest cosplayers of all time, and getting her on the show is just insane. Combos and Doodles again is like actually a really big, really prolific artist. People got in the fucking comment section. They're like, they are not prolific. What are you talking about? Which I thought was absolutely slanderous. I think Combos is fantastic. And Critical Bliss is also an insane get. It's like the biggest adult game publisher right now. We had played several different titles of theirs before they even came on the show. And one of the cool things about that interview in particular was that after we finished recording, he was like, hey, let me just show you some shit that I'm working on. He like pulls up the Discord. He's like, here's all the artists that I'm working with and the stuff that they're sending me. And here's some of the cool animations. And he showed this showcase of how he was doing a dialogue segment in a game, kind of like an animated comic, which is what inspired us to go and do The Creature of Casterfield more like that rather than a classic visual novel style. So it really can't be undersold how cool a lot of these guests are and how interesting it is to be able to come and talk to these people. And like Marcy Mallard, for example, I get to talk to Marcy every day. And we're working on stuff and writing silly things. And when we had the Locktober winners get to pick topics and content and stuff to get put in the games, I get to torture Marcy by being like, hello, yes, I need you to write about sounding now. I need you to please find out what's fun about sounding, because I can't personally relate to that, but I need you to know. I need you to figure it out. And so it's always just memes and talking shit. And we, for example, while we were blocking out a scene to go in the Grand Butt Sex Hotel, Marcy used an Australian politician as a stand-in for one of the characters when drawing out wireframes with the different scenes and stuff. I will leave them nameless because I don't want to promote anyone from those particular political parties, but a funny moment nonetheless. And look, like you said, we really are looking forward to trying to get more people onto the show. Those episodes do perform really well because I think people are very excited to get a chance to talk to these people that don't really have that same kind of platform or outlet where they can just kind of come up and talk to people directly like that, and be able to talk about these kind of things. The adult gaming and adult art and stuff like that, and just porn in general, is not really topics that are covered on podcasts very often. Things that people feel comfortable talking about in public. Or we had a lot of guests that I've reached out to being like, I don't feel comfortable revealing my voice on the show, and stuff like that. So there is kind of a lot of barriers for us to be able to cross to get people to come on the show and kind of talk about this kind of stuff. But that means that if you have a favorite developer or a favorite game, you should be reaching out to them. You should be like, hey, you should, try and get onto the Sexy Business podcast. We can come and play their game, get a free Steam key, and then come and pick their brain about all the cool stuff that they are working on. Because it's a lot of fun for us, otherwise we wouldn't still be doing it. We're almost at 100 episodes. That is
Crazy.
many weeks of commitment to jerking our shit. A thing I was probably going to do anyway, but this time I get to talk about it. And that's exciting for me. And, you know, obviously we get a small upside here at THM because we get to talk about our games and stuff like that and promote things like that. And as I said earlier, I didn't want this to be like a Circle Jerk Awards show like the Adult Game Awards. And that's why we had just the one category, which is like fan favorite. And in the future, we are probably going to do another awards show sort of like this. Next year, we'll do the same kind of thing. But we might get more fan interaction. We might do more polls. We might get more people to come in and vote on some of their favorite stuff.
But if you want that to happen, then you need to share this video. It needs to get attention. Otherwise, me and Spooky are just going to be really lazy next year, and we're going to do the exact same thing. But if this does get attention, or if you do want a adult game style show that is less, you know, just blatant shilling, we could possibly do something like that. But it would take a lot of community effort and engagement, or otherwise we're going to get like, you know, 2 people voting on the categories we've spent hours putting together.
Yeah, exactly. And so, look, I'm excited to be able to do stuff like this, and I think the podcast has been going very well. And we appreciate you, the viewer. You should get a Sexy Business Award as the Sexiest Business Consumer Award, I guess, for coming and hanging out.
Biggest Chads.
Biggest Chad Award. Nicest Cock Award goes to you, loyal viewer. But yeah, that is our time. We do like to keep it punchy here. We did kind of rush through some of these ones. I would love to sit here and talk about all these cool people that we've worked with over the year all day, but viewership retention doesn't work that well when you get closer to an hour. And so instead, we need you to be clicking buttons now. Click the buttons now. Neko, tell them what buttons to click.
Wow, you watched all of the 2025 Sexy Business Awards. This means you probably like us really so much. And so you should give us a like on this video. And while you're down there, if you haven't subscribed yet, what's wrong with you? Go subscribe to our content and make sure to turn on notifications because, as we mentioned earlier, this kind of content gets delisted and shadow banned and basically will probably never show up in a search result. So if you don't have notifications on, then you won't know that we are posting stuff every single week. We posted interviews, we talk about various games, we talk about sometimes fetishes or interesting things that are going on in the news, and we have lots of fun stuff that'll be coming in the next year, so check those out. And feel free to leave a comment down below. You know, what were some of your picks if you got to choose your best lewd gameplay of the year or your favorite waifu? We would love to hear what some of your favorites were, because that way we might be able to play them or talk about them or possibly do an interview related to them in the next year, and then they might show up in the 2026 Sexy Business Awards. But if we don't know those games exist, then they won't show up. So tell us your recommendations. And otherwise, that'll be it for the 2025 Sexy Business Awards. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.